Hello, today we're going to start drawing a floor plan or a plan. And before we start drawing, I'd like to go over some basic differences between the floor plan and, say, a perspective. The first thing that probably needs to be said is that a floor plan is a type of orthogonal drawing. So unlike perspectives in which you can perceive depth through vantage points, with the floor plan, something that is really crucial is to represent the dimensions of the object that you want to draw. In order to do that, though, you first need, before starting the drawing, to, with the help of the Mayline, draw some construction lines and make sure that the paper that you'll be drawing on is straight and that the edges of the paper are aligned and perpendicular to the ruler. Once you do that, tape the paper to the board or table just to make sure that it won't shift while you're drawing. Once that has been dealt with, you probably want to start drawing the construction lines. I'd like to point out, for example, that with plans, you need to select a point where you're going to cut the object. Here we have drawn the area where we are cutting to make it easier for you to understand more or less where is it. In this case, it's more or less 1 1/4 inches up the model. You always also need to make sure that the point where you're cutting will lead to a very interesting plan. Once you have decided where you're cutting, you should probably just start drawing, but before you do that, you need to start measuring the object. Once you decide that, for instance, it will always be helpful to have a ruler at hand. In this case, we're using a triangle. In order to start the drawing, I have selected an HB pencil. So while, for instance, H pencils usually are lighter, they're more convenient to draw construction lines. On the other hand, B pencils will be darker. You can go all the way to 6B. Since we're not adding line weights yet, I'm starting with an HB. Your Mayline will also have the dimensions set, so you can also use them as a reference. So since in this case I noticed that the first part that I want to draw is 1 inch long, I'm going to take the triangle or the Mayline Another useful tip that you might want to take into account is that while you draw, you can rotate the pencil so that the lead doesn't wear out as fast as it could if you don't. So the first part that I've drawn is this section over here. As you keep working, just make sure that you're always measuring every part. This other part, for instance, just measures 2 inches. In this case, we're going to use both the Mayline and the triangle. Another useful tip that you might want to consider is that you should draw lines always from bottom to top. It'll be easier for you to control them that way. So this is what we have right now. You can see that the lines that I've drawn so far are aligned with those parts of the model that I've drawn. So the lines that I drew first are the parts where I'm cutting through the object. Ideally, once you have the entire drawing, you will start adding line weights. And usually the part where you're cutting is the part that will be darker. Okay, so now that we've done all the main components, we're just going to start adding line weights. As I said earlier, the parts that you need to highlight first, or the most, are those where you're cutting. So in order to do that, I would usually recommend either a 4B or a 6B. Once you're done with the drawing, this would be the final result. And as you can see, if you place the model over it, it fits perfectly in it because all dimensions were taken into account. That's it, and thanks for watching.